Have you ever heard your own voice come out of somebody else's mouth? I do not mean somebody copying you. I mean your actual self. The thing you made in the dark of a hard year with nothing but a piano and a pencil and a heart that was breaking. And then one day, you are standing in a grocery store and it comes pouring out of the speakers in the ceiling, and the whole world is singing along. And not one of them, not a single soul, knows your name. They are singing the wrong name. And you have to stand there in the cereal aisle, 63 years old, and decide whether to cry or to keep shopping. I made that decision 1,000 times. For 40 years, I kept shopping. This is the story of the day I finally stopped. My name is Della Mosby. I am 63 years old. I live in Detroit, Michigan, and I wrote some of the most famous love songs of the last 50 years. You have heard them. I would put money on it. You have danced to one of mine at a wedding. You have cried to one in a parked car. You have made a baby to one. I would bet, and for every one of those moments, the name printed under the title belonged to a man named Cordell Reese. It was never his. It was mine. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, I get to say that out loud to a room full of people. So let me say it plain. I wrote those songs. Me, a black woman from the east side of Detroit who the world decided was a voice and a pen and never, not once, a name. Before I go on, let me ask the people listening tonight something. And I mean it. I will be reading these. If you have ever done the work and watched somebody else take the bow, tell me in the comments what it was. The idea your boss presented as his own, the recipe, the design, the solution, the song. Tell me what you made that somebody else got the credit for. Because I have a feeling this room is going to fill up tonight with the uncredited, and I want us all to be in here together, where our names are finally on the door. Now let me tell you where the songs came from, because you cannot understand the theft until you understand the gift. I have been able to hear music my whole life the way other people hear talking. When I was a little girl in my mother's house, I could sit at her old upright piano, the one with the chipped middle C that I loved more than any perfect note, and I could find the chord that matched whatever any person in that house was feeling before they said a word. My mother used to say I was born with the radio already playing inside me. That piano was the center of my whole childhood. My mother bought it secondhand for almost nothing because of that one chipped key, middle C, that played a little dull and a little flat. And the man selling it apologized for the flaw like it ruined the whole instrument. But I loved that note more than all the perfect ones because it was honest. It sounded the way real life sounds, a little broken, a little off, still ringing anyhow. I taught myself everything on that piano. I could not afford lessons, so I learned the way poor gifted children have always learned, by ear and by hunger, sitting for hours finding the chords underneath the songs on the radio, and then, when those ran out, finding the chords underneath songs that did not exist yet, songs that were only in me. By the time I was 12, I was writing down melodies on the backs of church bulletins because staff paper cost money, and faith was free. I wrote my first real song at 13, sitting on the floor of our living room while my mama did my hair. And it was about her, and it made her cry. And I knew right then what I was for. Church is where the gift got its wings. I came up singing in a Baptist choir where the music was not a performance, it was a lifeline. Where grown women who cleaned houses all week stood up on Sunday and let out a sound that could crack the sky open. And I learned from them the thing you cannot teach. I learned how to put the whole truth of a feeling into a melody, so that a stranger 40 years later in a grocery store would stop in the aisle because something in the song knew something about her life. That is not a skill. That is a calling. And I had it bad. By the time I was 19, I was writing songs that grown professionals could not write. Real ones, songs with bones in them. And word got around the East Side that there was a Mosby girl who could write a hit in an afternoon. And that is how I came to be sitting across a table from Cordell Reese. You have to understand what it is to have this particular gift, because most people will go their whole lives and never once meet it. I could be riding the bus, and a woman 2 seats up would sigh a certain way, a tired, married kind of sigh, and a whole song would arrive in me, all at once, melody and words and the bridge and everything, like a radio station I had just tuned into. My job was never to invent the song. My job was to catch it before it got away, to get it down on the back of a bulletin before the bus reached my stop. The songs were real before I ever wrote them. I just had the ears to hear them and the hands to hold them still. And there were so many of them, more than I could ever use, pouring through me, that handing a few to a beautiful man with a beautiful voice did not feel, at 19, like losing anything at all. It felt like there would always be more. And there always was more. That was the cruelty hidden inside my own gift. It was so generous that it made me careless with it. Cordell was a singer, a beautiful singer. I will never take that from him. With a voice like warm oil and a smile that could talk a bird down out of a tree. But Cordell could not write. Not really. He could not find the bones of a song to save his life. What Cordell had was the look, and the charm, and a hunger to be a star so big you could warm your hands on it. And what I had was everything he was missing, and no idea yet what it was worth. I wrote him a song, then another, then the big one, the one you have heard, the one that made him. I wrote it at my mother's piano in one night, after a boy had broken my 19-year-old heart, and I poured all of it into that melody, every bit of the missing and the wanting. And I gave it to Cordell, and he sang it, and it went up the charts like it had been shot out of a cannon, and overnight, Cordell Reese was a star. I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard it on the radio. I was standing at my mother's stove, stirring a pot, and it came on. My song, my heart, my one sleepless night, pouring out of that little kitchen radio into the whole country all at once. And for about 4 seconds, I was the happiest I have ever been. Because there is no feeling on this earth like hearing the thing you made out loud in the world for the first time. And then the man on the radio said Cordell's name, only Cordell's name. And my mother looked at me from across the kitchen, and neither one of us said a word, because there was nothing yet to say. We did not know, standing there, that we were hearing the very first day of a 40-year silence. We only knew the radio had gotten my name wrong, and that nobody on God's earth was ever going to correct it. And here is where they got me. I want every young person listening to hear this part especially, because the trap they set for me is still set today, just dressed in newer clothes. I was 19, and I was black, and I was a woman, and I was broke, and I did not have a daddy in the business, or a husband in the business, or a lawyer of my own, or one thin dime to fight with. And the men around Cordell, the manager and the label men, they sat me down, and they were so kind, and they told me they would take care of everything. They handed me a piece of paper and a pen and a check, a flat fee, a few $100s, which to a broke girl from the East Side felt like a fortune. And they told me to sign, and that the credit and the rest of it, we would all sort out later. We are family now. Do not you worry about the paperwork. I want to describe that room to you, because some version of it is still operating today, and I would spare somebody what I went through. It was a nice room. They had nice rooms on purpose. There was a man behind the desk who called me talented, who called my song special, who said the word family more times in 20 minutes than my own people said it at Christmas. And there was a kindness in it, a warm, terrible kindness. The kindness of people who have decided to take something from you and have figured out that the cheapest way to do it is to make you feel grateful while they do it. Nobody in that room raised a voice. Nobody threatened me. They just smiled and slid the paper a little closer and let my own hunger and my own youth and my own trust do all the work an ugly threat would have done in an uglier room. I signed. God help me. I signed. I sold the rights to my own song and my name off of it for a few $100s and a promise to sort it out later. And later never came. It never comes. That is the whole trick. They get you to sign away your life when you are too young and too broke and too grateful to know that the paper in front of you is the only thing that was ever going to matter. I kept writing them, too, for years. Because by then I needed the flat fees to live, and because Cordell would come around with that smile and that need. And a part of me, I will be honest, a part of me still loved making the songs, even knowing where the credit would go. Because the song does not care whose name is on it. The song just wants to be born. So I kept birthing them, and Cordell kept singing them. And Cordell Reese became a legend, and a wealthy man, and a name in the history books, on the back of a catalog of songs that came, every single one, out of a black woman's heart at a chipped piano on the east side of Detroit. Now you may be wondering why they did not just make me a star myself. I had the voice. Lord knows I had the songs. And the answer is the ugliest part. And I am going to say it plain because that is what tonight is for. They told me, in so many words, that I was not what a star looked like. I was too dark, too plain, they said, too country, too real. The camera, they said, wanted something else. They wanted my voice on the demo and my words on the page, and they wanted a different kind of woman standing in the light singing them. They were not even cruel about it, which somehow made it worse. One of them, a man I had thought was a friend, sat me down and explained it to me gently, like he was doing me a favor. He told me I had a gift the world would happily pay for, as long as it never had to look at the face it came out of. He told me my voice was a Cadillac, and my face was the wrong color to drive it. He believed he was being honest with me. He believed he was being kind. And the most shameful thing, the thing I have never told a living soul until tonight, is that for a long time, I believed him. I looked in the mirror at 19 years old, and I agreed with them about my own face. And that agreement is the heaviest thing I have ever had to set down. It took me 40 years to lift my chin back up off the floor they pointed it at. So I sang every one of those songs first, alone, into a cassette recorder in my mother's kitchen, just me and the chipped piano. And then I handed my voice to the people they had decided the world would rather look at. I kept those cassettes, every one. Hold on to that. It matters more than you know. The years went by the way years do. I got married to a good man named Earl, a steady man who worked the line at the plant for 35 years and who believed me about the songs when the whole world did not. I raised my children. I sang in my church, where folks knew me as Sister Della with the beautiful voice and had not the first idea that the songs on the radio were mine. There is a particular loneliness in that, one I have never heard anybody put into words. So let me try. To sit in a pew on a Sunday next to a woman who has been weeping all week to a song on her car radio, a song that came out of your own body, and to have her pat your hand and say, "Sister Della, you sing so pretty. You ought to do something with that voice someday. You ought to do something with that voice." I had done everything with that voice. I had built a man an entire kingdom with it. And I would just smile and say thank you and pass her the offering plate and carry the whole secret weight of it home, where only Earl knew, where only Earl had ever known. For 40 years, I was the most successful songwriter in that whole congregation, and the only one who was never once allowed to say so out loud. I made my peace with it, or I told myself I did. I would hear one of my songs at the grocery store, at a wedding, at a funeral once, my own song played at a stranger's funeral, and I would feel that old hand close around my heart. And then I would let it go, because what was the use? Earl was the only one who never once let me make it small. We would be at a wedding, somebody else's wedding, and one of mine would come on, and the whole floor would fill up, and Earl would take my hand under the table and squeeze it, and lean over and whisper, "They're dancing to you, Della. Every one of them. They're dancing to you." He said it for 30 years. He never let me forget it one single time, even when I begged him to, even when I told him that remembering hurt worse than forgetting. And he would just say, "Forgetting is what they want, baby. I'm not going to help them do it." That man carried the truth of me for 3 decades. The two of us alone, inside a marriage, like a candle you keep burning in a back room, so that one day, if the power ever does come back on, there will still be a live flame to light everything else from. I did not understand it then. He was keeping me ready. The paper said it was his. I had signed it. I was a grown woman, and bitterness is a poison you brew for your enemy and drink yourself. And I would not drink it. So I kept shopping. And I might have kept shopping right up until they put me in the ground. Except for what happened the spring my granddaughter Aaliyah turned 19. Aaliyah is my heart walking around outside my body. 19 years old, full of fire, with her grandmother's ear for music, which is how all of this finally came undone. Because that spring, a young singer, a big star now, a beautiful girl named Nyla Banks, put out a record that sampled one of my songs, took the heart of it, the melody I wrote at my mother's piano with my own broken 19-year-old heart, and built a brand new hit on top of it. And that hit was everywhere. And of course, the credit on Nyla's record went where the credit always went, to the catalog of the great Cordell Reese. I want you to understand how the machine works, because it is the very same machine that ate my name the first time. When Nyla's people went to clear that sample, to get the legal right to use the piece of the old song, they did not come to me. Why would they? My name was nowhere on it. They paid the people who hold the Cordell Reese catalog now, a company that had bought up his songs the way you would buy a parking lot. And those people collected a check for a melody I wrote on my mother's piano with my own broken heart. And not 1 cent of it, not one whisper of acknowledgement, came anywhere near the east side of Detroit. The lie does not just sit still for 40 years, it earns every single day. That lie was out there earning, and I was in my kitchen making my peace with it. And one evening, Aaliyah's in my kitchen playing me this new song off her phone, all excited, saying, "Granny, listen, isn't this beautiful?" And I went very still, because I knew that melody the way you know your own child's footsteps in the dark. And Aaliyah saw my face, and she stopped, and she said, "Granny, what's wrong?" And I did not mean to say it. It just came out of me after 40 years like water through a crack in a dam. I said, "Baby, that's my song. I wrote that song before your mother was born." My granddaughter looked at me, and she did not say, "Are you sure, Granny?" the way the world had taught me to expect. She did not look at me like a confused old woman misremembering. She looked at me like she believed me all the way down. And then this 19-year-old child set her jaw and said, "Then we're going to fix it." And I told her no. I have to tell you the truth about that, because it is the part I am not proud of. And it is the part somebody listening needs to hear. When my own granddaughter offered to help me reclaim my life's work, my first answer was no. "Leave it alone," I told her. "It is 40 years gone. Cordell is an old man now, a sick man, about to get some big lifetime award. And who am I to come out of a Detroit church choir and call a legend a liar? They will say I am a bitter old woman making up stories for attention and money. They will say I am jealous. They will drag my name, the little I have, through the mud. And for what? To prove a point about songs from before you were born? Let it lie, baby. Let me keep my peace. And that, right there, is the most dangerous lie they ever taught me. Because what I was calling peace was not peace. It was just a wound I had gotten so used to that I had stopped calling it a wound. I had made friends with my own erasure. And I almost let that comfortable old wound talk me out of the one chance I would ever get to be made whole. What changed my mind was the cassette. That night, after Leah went home, still fired up, I could not sleep, and I went down to the basement where Earl keeps everything in labeled boxes, and I found it. A shoebox of old cassette tapes, 40 years old, the plastic gone brittle. And I found the one, my own handwriting on the label, my maiden name, a date from before Cordell Reese was anybody. And I put it in Earl's old player, and I held my breath, and out came a voice. A 19-year-old girl, alone in her mother's kitchen with a chipped piano, singing the song the whole world thought a man wrote, singing it raw and real, and months before he ever opened his mouth to it. My voice, my song, my proof, sitting in a shoebox in my own basement for 40 years, while I told myself there was nothing to be done. I sat on that cold basement floor, and I listened to my 19-year-old self sing, and I wept. And somewhere in the weeping, the thing turned over in me, because I realized that if I died with that cassette in that box, the lie would become the truth forever. The history books would close on Cordell Reese's name, and my mother's chipped piano, and my broken heart, and my whole gift would be erased not by him, but by my silence. I had spent 40 years protecting a piece that was really just my own disappearance, and I was done protecting it. I sat up there on that cold basement floor a long while, long enough that Earl came looking for me, worried, in his robe. And he found me with the cassette player in my lap and 40 years on my face. And he did not ask me what was wrong, because he already knew. He had always known. He just lowered himself down onto that hard floor next to me, 65 years old with his bad knees, and he put his arm around me, and we listened to that 19-year-old girl sing one more time. And when it was over, he said the only thing that needed saying. He said, "I have been waiting 30 years for you to be ready to fight for her." Her, the girl on the tape, me. And I understood, finally, that Earl had never once seen my silence as peace. He had seen it as a wound I would not let him heal, and he had been standing guard over it all that time, patient as the truth itself, waiting for the day I would let him help me bind it up at last. So I called my granddaughter back the next morning, and I said 3 words. I said, "Let's fix it." It did not happen overnight, and it did not happen easy, but it happened, and I want to tell you how, because this is the part that should put steel in somebody's spine tonight. Aaliyah, my fireball, took it to the internet, carefully, with respect, just the facts, and the young singer, Nyla Banks, the one who had sampled my song, when she heard there might be a question about who really wrote the thing she loved enough to build her own hit on, that young woman did not run from it. She came to Detroit. She sat in my kitchen, a big star in my kitchen, and she listened to that 40-year-old cassette, and she heard a 19-year-old girl singing her hit song 2 decades before she was born, and she put her hand over her mouth and she said, "Miss Della, the whole world needs to hear this." And then the proof did what proof does when somebody finally has the courage to bring it into the light. We found Lou Pettigrew, an old bass player who had been in the room back then, who was glad, after all these years, to finally tell the truth he had carried. We had the cassettes, dated, in my voice, my handwriting on the lead sheets I had also kept, the original words crossed out and rewritten in my own hand. The kind of thing no thief can ever fake, because a thief has nothing to cross out. That is the thing about real creation that the people who steal it never understand. A real song has a history. It has false starts and crossed out lines and a better word found at 2 a.m, all of it right there on the page in the maker's own hand. A fossil record of a thing being born. The thief only ever gets the finished song, the clean copy, the polished stone. He never has the mess. He never has the crossouts, because he was never in the room where the wrong word got replaced by the right one. When the experts laid my marked-up lead sheets down next to anything Cordell's side could produce, it was not even close. I had the labor pains right there on paper. All he had was the baby, and a baby with no record of its own birth is the easiest thing in the world to prove was never yours to begin with. The musicologist they brought in confirmed what any honest ear already knew. The songs were mine. They had always been mine. The truth had been sitting patient in a shoebox for 40 years, waiting on the day I got brave enough to press play. Cordell Reese never admitted a thing. I want to be honest about that, because the movie version, where the old man weeps and begs forgiveness, did not happen. He denied it through his lawyers right up until the evidence made denying it ridiculous. And then he went quiet. And then he let his people negotiate. He never once called me himself. The closest I ever got to an apology from that man was a settlement and a silence. And I have made my peace with the fact that some people are too far gone in their own legend to ever say the word sorry. I will tell you the one strange moment, though, because it has stayed with me. At a deposition, before all of it settled, I was standing in a hallway, and Cordell was being wheeled out the far end of it, an old man now, smaller than the legend. And for 1 second, across all that marble, our eyes met. And I did not see a monster. I saw a frightened old man who had built a cathedral on a foundation he stole, and who had spent 50 years terrified of the day somebody would finally notice the cracks. I did not feel triumph looking at him. I felt something closer to pity, and underneath the pity, free at last of all the wanting, I felt the cleanest thing I have felt in 40 years. I knew exactly who I was. He did not. He never had. For all his fame, that man had to borrow a self from a 19-year-old girl in a kitchen, and he had been paying the interest on it, in fear, every day since. His punishment was not anything I did to him. His punishment was the truth, which does not care how famous you are, and which had his number all along. But the credits got fixed. My name, my real name, went on to those songs, where it had belonged for 40 years, in writing, forever. The royalties started coming, decades of them, more money than Earl and I will ever spend, money that is putting my grandbabies through college and then some. But I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth. The money was not the thing. The thing that broke me wide open, came at a tribute concert that Nyla Banks put together, a whole show of young artists singing my catalog and finally saying my name. They brought me out at the end, 63 years old, in a gown my granddaughter picked out, onto a stage with my name in lights for the first time in my life. And they sat me down at a piano, and it was not a fancy piano. That child Nyla had found my mother's actual upright, the one with the chipped middle C, had it restored and trucked to that stage as a surprise. And when I put my hands on those keys and felt that one chipped note under my finger, 50 years fell away, and I sang my song, the big one, the one I wrote at 19 with a broken heart. I had not sung it in front of a living soul in 44 years. I had sung it once into a tape in my mother's kitchen, and then I had handed it away and spent 4 decades watching it become somebody else's, from the audience, from the cheap seats, from the grocery store aisle. I had never, one time, gotten to stand in the light that song made and say, "This came out of me." And now, there I was. My hands knew that song better than they knew my own grandchildren's faces. I did not need a word of it in front of me. The words had been living down in my chest for 44 years, just waiting on permission. And when I opened my mouth, the voice that came out was not a careful 63-year-old's voice. It was hers, the girl on the cassette. She had been in there the whole time, holding her breath, holding the note, waiting for me to come back and let her finish the song in front of the people it was always meant for. I sang it myself, in my own voice, under my own name, in front of the whole world, for the first time in 44 years. And the whole room sang it back to me. And this time, this one time, they knew exactly whose song it was. My granddaughter, Aaliyah, was in the front row, the child who flat refused to let it lie, recording the whole thing on her phone and crying too hard to hold it steady. And somewhere in the second verse, I found Earl's face out in that crowd. My Earl, who had carried my candle in a back room for 30 years. And he was not even looking at the stage. He was looking at the people, at every one of them, up on their feet, singing my words back to me, with my own name finally on their lips. And he had the face of a man watching the power come back on, watching every light in a house he had kept ready in the dark blaze up all at once. So let me leave you with this. Every one of you who ever made something beautiful and watched the world hand the credit to somebody else, the truth is, patient. That is the thing I learned in a basement at 63 years old, holding a brittle old cassette. The lie they put on your work is loud, and it is famous, and it can last for 40 years. But it is still just a lie, and a lie has to be fed and propped up and defended every single day, while the truth just sits there in a shoebox, costing nothing, waiting. You do not have to be loud to beat a loud lie. You just have to refuse to die with your proof still in the box. Whatever your shoebox is, the journal, the email, the witness, the memory, the thing that proves you were the one, do not let them bury it with you. Press play. It is never, ever too late to put your own name back on your own life. I am Della Mosby. I wrote the songs the whole world sang to a stranger's name, and at 63, I sat down at my mother's piano and took my name back in front of God and everybody. A song remembers who wrote it, even when the world forgets. And so, in the end, did I? If you have ever watched somebody else take a bow for the work of your own two hands, get down in the comments and tell me what you made. Tell me your song. Somebody scrolling past tonight is sitting on their own shoebox, too scared to press play, and they need to see a whole room of us who finally did. And if this one reached you, you already know how to find the next. Go on and sing, in your own name, while you still can. And do not you dare let them bury your proof in the box.